All right, Shalom. I want to start out by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, April 20th, 2026, Missile Monday. And I have this article from Times of Israel. And it says, could Iran's missiles carry nuclear warheads? An expert breaks down the threat. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. It says, as Iran continues to launch missiles at Israel, a question looms large in the minds of defense analysts and civilians alike. If Iran's nuclear program is able to advance, could those same missiles one day carry nuclear warheads? To understand the threat and the technology behind it, the Times of Israel spoke with Tal Embar, a veteran expert in aviation policy, space, and missile issues. Embar has spent decades tracking the development of missile systems in Iran, North Korea, and beyond. What makes a missile nuclear capable? According to Embar, two basic features determine whether a missile can be equipped with a nuclear warhead: the weight the missile can carry, payload capacity, and the physical space inside the warhead compartment. Every missile with a warhead of roughly 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds could theoretically be fitted with a nuclear warhead, he explained. This would include Iran's Shahab-3 missile family, a series of medium-range ballistic missiles based on the North Korean Scud platform, and its more advanced variants such as the Ghadar, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Ahmad, which have been used in the current conflict. It's not a huge technical problem, Embar said. They already have missiles capable of carrying the necessary weight. How far can these missiles reach? The missiles Iran has fired at Israel thus far have a range of around 1,800 kilometers, 1,100 miles, but Embar notes Iran's capabilities go further. They have the ability to reach over 2,000 kilometers or 1,240 miles, at least with one type of missile which they haven't used yet, he said. Iran is also developing systems with much longer ranges. Embar pointed to the GAM 100, a space launch vehicle developed by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, that is theoretically capable of carrying a nuclear payload to a range of up to a range up to 5,000 kilometers or 3,100 miles. Still, he said the likelihood of Iran using such a long-range system is low. They don't need to. Who are they going to target beyond Israel? Oh, well, the answer to that is America. That's who they're going to target. This is why, these different countries or these different nuclear armed nations have these long-range missiles, such as Russia, China, and North Korea. All three of these nations possess long-range missiles that can reach America from their respective countries. So that's why or that's who they're, going to target, beyond the land of Israel, because again, they can. They have already, shot, their missiles over there, their non-nuclear missiles at, the rats. Because again, the land of Iran, which, is, modern day Persia, or, Iran is modern day Persia, but the land of Israel is not that far, so it wouldn't take that long for a missile to reach that land. But as far as them possessing long range weapons, where they're going to target America, that's who they're going to target, So there's the answer to that, man. It's not a wild guess, It says, what about multiple warheads? Iran has claimed to possess multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, or MIRV, which allow a single missile to carry multiple warheads and strike several targets. According to Embar, Iran has tested a missile, the Khorramshahr, with this capability, but there's no evidence it's operational. Where did Iran get this technology? Iran's missile program began decades ago after the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. Iran purchased Scud missiles from North Korea and Libya, which became the foundation for its own designs. Also in the 1980s, the IRGC sent a delegation to Syria to acquire the know-how for production, or for producing these missiles locally. The result of the Shahab 3, essentially an upgraded and enlarged version of North Korea's Scud. Although Iran and North Korea once followed similar paths, Embar said that today their missile programs have diverged. Each country developed its own arsenal of missiles without any technical knowledge transferred between them. There is no correlation between the programs and no cooperation currently, he said. That said, the systems are technically compatible, though highly unlikely to happen. An Iranian missile could carry a North Korean nuclear weapon with no significant changes, Embar noted, but emphasized that North Korea is unlikely to hand one over. You never know, because again, if, North Korea is allies with Russia, which, I have to go and check, but, I'm sure. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they're allies with Russia as well, because if I'm not mistaken, their militaries actually did training together at some point, but it is, wouldn't be surprising if North Korea would help Iran with their nuclear program, but just going to read a little bit more. I'm not going to read the entire article. I'll leave it in the description for those that want to check it out. But it says, where does Iran's nuclear program stand today? Despite Iran's advanced missile capabilities, it has not yet developed a nuclear weapon. Still, Iran was once dangerously close, Embar referenced the nuclear archives smuggled out of Iran and revealed by Israel in 2018, which showed that prior to 2003, Iran had built and tested nearly every component of a nuclear bomb. 20 years ago, Iran knew how to build a bomb, Embar said. They built all the components except for the nuclear core itself. At least that's what's known. Today, Iran possesses large stockpiles of enriched uranium at 60% purity, well beyond what's needed for civilian energy use, and enough to build at least 10 cores for atomic bombs if enriched further to 90%. But enrichment alone isn't enough. Turning that uranium gas into a functional warhead requires further weaponization, a process Embar says was meant to happen at the Isfahan facility, which was reportedly struck by Israel just days ago. Embar is skeptical that Iran has secretly crossed the nuclear threshold. No one will mess with the nuclear power. He noted bluntly, if they had it, they would have showed it. Well, you never know, because again, they're probably just waiting for the right time, which the right time will be during the time of World War III is when they're going to use it. Because, like I said, I personally believe that they have, nuclear weapons or a nuclear weapon at least, hidden somewhere. Just like they have the uranium hidden, I'm sure they have, at least a couple nuclear weapons hidden, and they're just waiting for that time to use them, It says still some infrastructure remains intact. A breakthrough is not very plausible in the next few days or weeks, he said, but it all depends on how many centrifuges they still have left in Natanz, another major enrichment site. And of course, Fordo wasn't attacked yet, and we don't know exactly what they have there. So, right, they have the pictures of their bases, but hey, you clearly see that all eyes are still on Iran, especially, after they've been accused, for decades of having, WMDs, aka weapons of mass destruction, which all of the current nuclear armed nations have. They all have weapons of mass destruction. It doesn't matter which country it is. Certain of these missiles are more devastating than others, obviously, but these nuclear weapons that are on the earth, literally have the capability of destroying the planet Earth, but as it says in the scriptures, the earth abideth forever. So the entire planet Earth won't be destroyed, but certain lands will, like it gives a brief description, or not a brief, but a very vivid description of how, Babylon the Great, which is the land of America today, is going to look after, World War III. This place is going to be a desert, because once that fire goes out, which is going to put itself out, because these nuclear weapons, once they're detonated, man, the heat from these missiles are going to burn at 100 million degrees Celsius, man. It's extremely hot. Just like it also makes mention in the scriptures, that fervent heat, and that's what it's talking about, So certain lands will get hit. We know for sure America is going to be destroyed and be left completely desolate. It's going to be left as a memorial, just like Sodom and Gomorrah. Ancient Sodom and Gomorrah was left as a memorial of how not to live. That's going to be the same case for America. The land of Israel is going to be destroyed, but it's going to be built back up, because our Lord is going to bring his people back to the land of Israel. He's going to bring us back home. And then, I personally believe that other lands will get hit, because, just certain of these other lands, I'm just throwing this random out. But, India, I believe India needs to get hit. And the reason why I say India in particular, because it's very filthy over there, man. I don't know which city over there it is specifically, whether it's Delhi, New Delhi, or however you pronounce it, Delhi. But, Elam, they're very nasty people. Really all of the heathens. But, with the street food, and then their water over there, man, is very filthy, man. So, India might have to take a nuke one time. But, this is me being facetious, man. But, in all seriousness, that's the time that we're in, man. We're in the time of war. And we're going to see things, between, Israel, the United States, and Iran continue to heat up until that great day, World War III finally kicks off, which World War III is technically already started, but it won't be official until Russia and America, are directly at odds with each other, So I'm going to start with the book of Isaiah, chapter 54 and verse 16. And it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy and right." The modern day smith would be these scientists and physicists that are behind creating and developing these nuclear weapons. And again, one primary example of this would be, Julius Robert Oppenheimer, aka the father of the atomic bomb. He would be a modern day smith because this man, he worked on the Manhattan Project, and he also worked on, the bombs, Fat Man and Little Boy that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, So this is a scripture that can apply to him, man, because again, what does a smith do? A blacksmith is, an individual that, creates weapons, that forges weapons through fire, And what are these scientists doing? They're creating weapons, man. And not just any old weapons, weapons of mass destruction, man. Weapons that literally have the capability to destroy the earth, And that's the waster to destroy the missile themselves, in particular, the warhead, as it mentions, So things are going to get worse. And again, they keep saying, well, do they? Yes, man. Because in reality, yes. If Iran, has missiles, and they're saying that technically, the missiles that they have that are non-nuclear have the capability of carrying, nuclear payloads, then guess what? They can... Come on, man. And then it's like it's trying to downplay it. Well, why do they need long-range missiles? Who are they going to target outside of Israel? The United States. That's who they're going to target, Because again, the U.S. is also involved in the war with them. So why wouldn't they? They have, missiles aimed at America. There's, I'm pretty sure numerous countries that are nuclear armed that have their nukes pointed at America. And as we know, the big three, as I'm going to call them, the big three, Russia, China, and North Korea, they have their missiles aimed at this place for sure. It's without a doubt. It says the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 5. It says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but they shall be with burning and fuel of fire and right." This coming world war, is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear weapons. That's that, burning and fuel of fire that it's talking about, because this, Third World War isn't going to be fought how traditional warfare was fought, hand-to-hand combat. You have one nation of men on one side of the battlefield, another nation of men on the other side of the battlefield, both groups having different weapons, of war, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, these different things charging each other, at the center of the battlefield, man, until one nation is left standing. It's not going to be like that. This war is going to be fought with these nuclear missiles. And as I always make mention, you will have ground troops because they're talking about in December of this year, they're going to start, drafting, anyone between the ages of, 18 to 25, So all of these YNs, they were born between, 2001 and 2008, you're cooked. So y'all gonna be over there on the front lines fighting for your country, and you're not coming home either. So just to let you know that. But again, man, you will have ground troops that are going to be fighting as well, but that's primarily how this Third World War is going to be fought, with these nuclear weapons. Let's get the book of Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 4. It says, "The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle." And right, that great noise, or the noise of the multitudes is talking about, those missiles, man, the warheads, because you're going to hear them before you see them, man, because they're going to make a very loud noise, because a lot of them are going to be launched simultaneously. You're going to hear that rocket propulsion system guiding these missiles to their target, and they're not going to miss. None of these missiles are going to fail. Now, these defense systems, that America and Israel has in place, they're going to fail ultimately. But all of these missiles that are going to get launched toward this place, they're not going to, they're not going to miss. They're not going to be deactivated. All of them are going to hit, with 100% accuracy. In verse 5, it says, "They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land." And right, it may mention in that article that, Iran also has missiles, long range missiles as well. So they're questioning who else would Iran target outside of Israel. Well, again, the United States. And this is what it's talking about, man, not just Iran, but even these other countries. They have these long range weapons, because again, they're going to be launched from the east, really all over the world, but just using the east as an example. But they're going to be launched from the east, and they're going to land in the west. They're going to be shot from one end of the earth and land on the other side. So all of these nations that are against America, they're going to launch their missiles here, man. Even America's allies are going to turn on her, and burn this place. Just like it says in Revelation, 17 and verse 16, these shall hate the whore, So all of these different nations that are allies with America are starting to, turn their back on this place too. So I'm just going to get a couple more. I don't want to make this too long, but I'm going to get the book of Joel chapter 3 and verse 9. And it says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong." And right, this is what these different nations are doing. They're putting their resources toward, their military, or if they have, nuclear weapons, toward their nuclear arsenal, because again, that's the time that we're in, a time of war, so hence the term guns and butter, man. These different nations are putting their money toward their guns, which is what? The military, the butter being, for the people, taking care of, things back at home, which again, they can't, have both, but saying that we're in a time of war. So again, that's what these different nations are doing, putting their money toward their military, to get ready ultimately to go to war with the whore, So let's end it with the book of Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15. It says, "And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men." And right, when you read in Revelation the 7th chapter, it mentions the 4 angels, which these are 4 literal angels holding back the 4 winds, which the 4 winds represent, the coming destruction that is going to befall the planet Earth, World War III, if you will, because there is a set time when these angels are going to be loose, when this war is going to take place. That's why it says, there's a particular, hour, day, month, and year. There's a set time. The Heavenly Father wants these things to play out, because again, we still have to wait for one major prophecy, to take place before that can happen. And that prophecy being the mass implementation of the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip, which again, that prophecy is here, which is waiting for it, to come to pass, but it's just to slay the third part of men. And they have three classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which today are the biblical Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are the different heathen nations. And then you have the sons of the wicked, which are the nation of Edom, you so-called white people. That's who this destruction is for. It's for you. You have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that are going to get caught up in this destruction. And then you heathens, as always, you're just collateral damage. You're just here to make your little money and die. But we can clearly see that, we're getting closer and closer to, that great and dreadful day, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.